So a few years ago, when I was still living in South Africa, my friend had saved a bunch of passes to the Kruger Park he has been given through his work, and decided to treat me and two other friends to a road trip. A close friend of my uncle owned a property on a small game reserve really close to Kruger, so I asked if we could stay there for 5 days, and we got the all clear, so we were pretty hyped. A week-long trip to the bush, and all the money that we would have had to spend on accommodation and entrance fees was instead spent on petrol, food, and most of all, booze. I had stayed at Trevor's place a few times before. Before growing up, accommodation in the Kruger Park itself was always really expensive, so most of my trips there we stayed at his place, sometimes with him there, sometimes without. He was a really laid-back guy, with loads of money, and was really cool all around. It was a really nice property too, much nicer than most of the places you get to stay at the Kruger Park. We settled in and made ourselves at home pretty quickly after arriving. It was like a little piece of luxury for us. We each got our own room, and I only had to share a bathroom with one other girl. There was a pool and fire pit in the back garden, which is where we spent most of our evenings barbecuing and drinking sundowners after the day's activities of watching wild animals from my friend's Toyota. Our spirits were really lifted, because we had been quite lucky the past few days, with how much we got to see during our drives, and we were hoping our luck would last till the end of the trip. Sometimes you can go to Kruger and just see a whole bunch of impala and like a warthog in the far distance, and sometimes it's like Noah's Ark outside your window. On the second last night, things took a bit of a dive. It started when the power went out at around 9, not unusual in South Africa by any means, and especially now it's out in the rural areas. We predicted it would probably be the whole night without electricity, which was a bit annoying, but didn't kill the night by any means. The four of us found a few candles and placed them in the main living room, and proceeded to play a bunch of drinking games by candlelight. Now, I'm gonna have to give a quick description on the layout of the house, so that this next part makes sense. We were in the living room, which was a large open area that had couches and a TV on one side, and a bar complete with a dartboard and pool table on the other side. There was a sliding glass door leading out to the back garden, where the pool and fire pit was. Attached to the lounge was a long corridor, along which all 5 bedrooms were located, most of which were en suite, so there are, I think, around 7 doors in total, if my memory serves me correctly. Basically, just a long-ass corridor that leads to the kitchen dining area, which was the same size as the room we were in, and also had a sliding glass door, except this one led to the front of the property, where my friend's car was parked. So, it's around 1 a.m. now, and everyone is pretty hammered. I was supposed to be driving us around the next day, so I was sticking to beers, when everyone else had already switched to the hard stuff. I was still pretty drunk, but was by far the most sober. All of a sudden, we heard a crashing sound in the kitchen. We all froze and looked between ourselves, no doubt all double-checking that it wasn't one of us that had gone for a snack. One of the guys looks over at me wide-eyed and mouthed, "Baboon." Shit, I thought. One of us must not have closed the door all the way. We knew, or I suppose, thought, that it was really safe out there, where we were, but you did have to make sure you kept everything shut up tight, because baboons will 100% take an open window as an invitation to steal all of your food. I did not particularly feel like facing a baboon, or possibly multiple baboons, as they were normally in troops. They're scary big up close, and I was sure that scaring it, or cornering it in the kitchen, could very well end up with me getting my face chewed off, so I started to brainstorm on how we could chase it away before it, or they, decide to start wandering around the house for more food, and eventually find us. I remember how Trevor had rubber snakes strewn around the property at various locations, outside specifically, to scare off any baboons, and this is what I formed my plan around. Being the most sober, I bravely anointed myself as head of the mission, and sent 2 of my friends to search around the room for any rubber snakes that might have been stored or hidden around. I then grabbed our box of matches we had used to light the candles, and slowly crept towards the dark corridor, my heart hammering in my throat. I could hear movement in the kitchen, and I remember praying that it hadn't broken something that belonged to Trevor, because I really didn't want to let him know we were dumb enough to leave a door open. About halfway down, I started to rattle the box, hoping to high heavens that it resembled the sound of a snake hiss or rattle, even though I wasn't even 100% sure we have rattlesnakes there. I took a few more slow steps towards the kitchen area, not being able to see into it at all, as it lay too far on the left of the hallway. I kept shaking the box without missing a beat. I was close enough now that, if one of my friends had found a toy snake, I'd be able to volley around the corner and into the kitchen, hopefully scaring the bejeebies out of the baboon. I had the drunkest of my friends simply standing watching by the bar window that had a view out onto the driveway, so he could let me know if it finally ran off. I couldn't hear movement in the kitchen anymore, but my friend hadn't given me the all clear, so I thought maybe it had heard me and was trying to figure out what the sound was. Doubling down on my snake impression, I started to hiss along with shaking the box of matches. I was hissing for maybe 3 or so seconds when I heard the sliding door open. It took me a moment to realize what was wrong when my friend Shout whispered from the bar, "Holy shit! Dude, that's not a fucking baboon! That was a fucking person, what the fuck?" My adrenaline was already pumping out, but made that shoot through the roof. I bolted around the corner, shut and locked the sliding door before booking it back to the lounge where the rest of my friends were all standing equally as wide-eyed and shaky as I was. The three of us that hadn't seen the guy rounded on the friend who had and started bombarding him with questions. Are you sure? Maybe it was just a particularly big baboon? But he was dead set on what he saw. And then I remembered that I had heard the sliding door, and upon announcing that everyone, we all fell silent to contemplate that fact. Baboons don't open sliding doors. They just don't. We figured that we must have actually closed it. We just didn't lock, because in our minds, we were just keeping out animals, not burglars. We were obviously all incredibly freaked out that someone had been in here. And the more we expressed that, the more we started to realize just how weird it was that someone was out here of all places. The property was on a private game reserve. The only way tourists got in was by booking drives in those big safari trucks. You weren't allowed to just drive around on your own unless you were staying on a property here. There were maybe 10 or so properties in total, and there were kilometers between them, as well as long as dirt roads to get to any specific one from the main road. It's just not the type of place that makes sense to rob, especially on foot. My friend said he saw the guy run into the bushes, not even down the driveway. It just didn't make any sense, and honestly, it still doesn't. I wish I had a better resolution for you guys. We told park security first thing the next morning, and they took us super seriously, which we were grateful for, and were given the private number of the head guard to contact after hours if we saw or heard anything on our last night, which we thankfully did not. I phoned Trevor too, obviously to tell him what had happened, and we were horrified but still teased me about pretending to be a snake in order to scare off what we thought was a baboon, saying that sounded like a pretty great way to get a baboon to run up to you and steal your matches. Haven't heard anything about it since, so I assume no one has ever tried to break in again. I guess we're just super unlucky that night.